Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. I just want to thank you all for coming out to our event. My name is Olivia McIntosh. I am the Vice President for Events and Outreach at CESAX, and we are the Continuing Education Students Association of X University. And to start off our event this evening, I'll start with Orlando acknowledgement. We can never work to end systematic and institutional violence if we do not center the narratives of Indigenous people in our collective decision-making for social justice and equity. As settlers in Turtle Island, we directly benefit from the colonization and genocide of the Indigenous people of this land. In order to engage in resistance and solidarity against the injustices inflicted on the Indigenous people, it is imperative we constantly engage in the acts of decolonization. X University is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, settlers, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty created in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I'll now pass it over to Juannitah.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Juannitah. I'm the Health Promotion Programs Coordinator, and I'm here to speak to you. I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to give you information around what are, some of the services that are available to students. And what I might just do is, at the beginning, maybe just give you a quick overview of potentially some things that may be happening that you may not realize, and I'm talking about now or potentially in the future, things that might happen that may be indicators that you need to reach out for help, or someone you know needs to reach out for help, and what you can do about those. So that'll be like a very quick thing. I will give you a heads up. I have a 3-year-old who may come through the door at some point and join in the conversation. And if she does, I'm hoping she'll not be as jovial and instructive as she can, but the worst she'll do is say hello, and that will be okay. So yeah, that's what I plan to do. And then at the end, we'll probably have a couple of Q&A sessions, Q&A options for you. So I'm just gonna share my screen. While I do this, I'll also just let you know that you will be getting a copy of this. I'll give this to your group, and they'll be able to share these slides with you as well. Okay. So I am here also to talk to you about well-being, because well-being is really key. I am, as a health promoter, I think one of the biggest, what's the word I can use? One of the biggest things that I've seen, and the most consistent things that I've heard from students is that they don't make this connection between health and well-being and academic performance. And when a part of your life is not going well, the academic piece is not going to go well. And some of you work as well, I expect. And you know that when a part of your life is not going well, work is difficult too. So my message to students always is that you have to maintain well-being in order for you to do well in the learning or the working part of your lives. And I'm hoping that some of this will be helpful to you and give you the information that you need to kind of get you thinking a little bit. At the moment, we've just spent the last year and a half stuck at home because of COVID. And all of us, I'm pretty certain, are screen saturated or text saturated when you consider the fact that we're now learning and sometimes working online, but also getting our entertainment online. So for people who may not have a TV screen, you're looking at your computer for your entertainment as well as connecting with family online. So all that FaceTime and phone, WhatsApp and whatnot, you're on tech all the time, much more than we've been ever before. And what that has done is it's led to a lot of emotional and mental health challenges for people. You might not realize it, but when you're looking at a screen, talking to someone, in normal times, they're over there on a screen, they're right here. they're right in your face. And sometimes depending on how people set up their screens, see, if I'm like this here, I'm right in your face. I'm right in your lounge right there. Whereas compared to being a little bit further away, it's less intimidating. And data and statistics have started to find that even though the intention is not to intimidate or to be carding somebody, people's anxieties go up because it feels like you're encroaching in their space. So living online has brought around things like heightened anxiety, feelings of being watched and being, and I bet you many people don't do it, but we also know that we're all really curious about what's happening in other people's homes. I can tell you I have a kid, so I have a mess in mine, and I've lived with that. But things like rate your room is become a key thing, and those things increase people's anxieties all the time. The other thing about the last year is we've missed our people. We can't connect. We're starting to just gradually be able to connect with people too. But a lot of us have not been able to come into contact with people we love, people we know, people we've been in contact with before. Holidays are a huge thing for Canadians. I love this country. I lived in England where people thought, the idea of going on a holiday is going to the next town. People here actually get in a plane and go places. We haven't had a chance to do that. And that's causing, like emotional and mental well-being challenges because we're not getting the breaks that we're used to. Being stuck at home and staycation is not really a break anymore. But yeah, we've lived the last year with this collective fear, collective grief, collective anger, collective doubt, uncertainty, etc., because of COVID. People have lost their jobs. People are worried about losing their homes, income challenges. All these things are kicking in, have kicked in and continue to kick in. As students, those are the things we continue to hear from students too. The worry about virtual learning. How much of what I'm learning is good learning? Is online learning as good as in-person learning? Am I losing out on things? Am I falling behind? Is the quality of education still good? Things like the fear of the unknown. Again, we still don't know what this next year is going to be like. Just as things start to open up again, the fourth wave is coming in. What does that mean? And will vaccines help? Will they not? Or are we going to go into another shutdown? So again, fear is still there. Relationships. I mentioned that people are missing out on relationships with family and friends, but we also have the other side of that coin where people have now been stuck for a year in homes, whether they are renting or living with a partner or family that they don't want to, and it's causing issues and problems there. And of course, the obvious one, the pandemic, am I going to get sick? You may have seen in your emails, it started coming through more and more recently, information about return to campus and things that need to be in place. When people come back to campus, some of the classes are going to be open. I'm not sure if any of your lectures are going to be in person anymore anytime soon. We're still hoping to have everybody back on campus in January, but some classes and certain areas of the campus are going to need to come back sooner. So return to campus planning has already started, and COVID updates and information has started going out. If you don't know what it is, I highly recommend the website that you go to this Rise and COVID website for more information. This is where you get information on what you need to do if you're going to come to campus. So you're going to need to put in like your vaccine proof. There's information on how to do that there. There's also information on what you need to do to access campus. If you're worried about health screening, there's not even worried about health screening. If you want to know how health screening is going to go, there's information here about how to get health screening, information here about what to do to stay safe. On here too, vaccinations, if you're not vaccinated and you have questions, or if you are vaccinated and have questions, if you have questions about the rapid antigen testing that you may need to do if you cannot get vaccinated, all that information is on this page here. Same with things like the policies. We now have a vaccine policy, we have a mask policy, the employee health and safety policy. All of those things are on this website. So if you haven't been on it, I highly encourage you to go there to get some of that information for you as it relates to COVID. And also just to know it before you come to campus, because you also don't want to come to campus thinking you can access buildings and then you're not able to because you haven't completed the step. In terms of well-being, I wanted to just go over a couple of things that will help you recognize or see when potentially things may be going wrong. And within student health and wellness, we have a model that we call the Notice, Engage, Referral model. It really is designed to be a guide for you to see when things are going wrong. Certainly not used to be diagnostive. We're not asking you to diagnose yourself or anybody else. We're not asking you to think the worst. We're just asking you to pay attention. It really is about saying, you know, let's pay attention, see where we are, and based on what we see, do something about that. Why is it important to do that? Because we need to know how to respond when things go wrong. I want to share this model with you. It was developed by Mr. Corey Keys. He's a professor out at Cornell, I think he's at now. And it's a mental health continuing for flourishing and languishing in life. And basically and this is especially for university students too, but basically what it is about coping. We all have to cope with things in life. But as we're coping, there's times when we cope well and times when we don't cope well. We can be flourishing at some times, and we can be not flourishing at other times. So let me just get this whole thing. Oopsie, let's get this whole thing on. When you're looking at this screen, on this end, the side where there's 1 and 3, this is the side where people without mental health or mental illness exist. And side 2 and 4 is the side where people with mental illness exist. All of us cope within the continuum, regardless of whether or not we have a mental health challenge. All of us can cope well or cope bad, if again, regardless of whether we have mental health challenges or not. And I shared this with you as a way of saying, it doesn't matter if you have a mental illness problem, sorry. It doesn't mean you cannot cope, and it doesn't mean you can't do well. And it also doesn't matter if you don't have a mental illness, because it means that you could also languish or just flourish. The mental status is not the thing that determines whether or not you do well. Your coping mechanisms, your strategies are the things that will determine whether you're going to flourish or languish. And I'll give you an example of that a little bit later on, but I want you to just remember this model in the sense that we all cope, regardless of whether we have mental illness or not. We all cope positively, we all cope negatively, regardless of whether we have mental illness or not. And if I can also just go back to this and just clarify that there is a difference between mental illness and mental health. Mental illness is that diagnosis that you get from an actual doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, etc. Mental health is something we all have. We all have anxiety and stress and happiness and sadness and all the emotions that we have, we all have that. But sometimes it's a bit more excessive. So you can have stress, but you can also have a stress disorder. Everybody has stress, not everybody has a stress disorder. So the mental illnesses tend to be something that is diagnosed by somebody and is treated by someone, whereas we all have mental health experiences within our lives. So when we're looking at the Notice, Engage, Refer, I really have us thinking about the mental health status that we're going through. And the next couple of things that I'm going to talk to you about are things I want you to think about when you start looking at your work and whether or not you're coping and whether or not your grades are going up or down, or your writing abilities or your paper assignments, everything is doing well or not. You will need to notice these changes, or if you start to notice these changes, they usually are indicators that something is going on. So an increased self-awareness is really what you need to be able to do in order to recognize personal challenges. And what that might look like, say, in your academic life, maybe it's harder for you to write papers, you're constantly delayed in submitting your papers. You know, you usually get your papers in on time, but suddenly you can't get them in on time anymore, or it's taking you longer, or you're making more mistakes. And if it's exams, you just can't remember things properly and your grades are starting to fall down. It may be things like not attending class. You could be going to class all the time and suddenly you're not going all the time. Or when you're in class, you're feeling so tired, you can't focus, you can't concentrate on what's being said. It could also be things like participation. If you're in class and you usually participate all the time, suddenly you're not participating anymore. Emotionally and behaviorally, these are things like outbursts. It could be unexpected bursts of crying or anger or aggression. It could also be just feeling really sad or feeling detached from people, wanting to self-isolate from from other people. Your behavior could also change. So if you're generally a quiet person, it could be you're very talkative all of a sudden. And the opposite, if you're usually chatty and engaged with other people, suddenly you're not engaged anymore and you're withdrawing. Physical indicators can be your personal hygiene. When you're struggling with something, getting up, taking a bath and slapping on your makeup or putting on your, your kit is going to be the absolute last thing that you want to do. So things like that start to slip down. And, for some people, it's one of those things where you say, hey, you know what? I'm here. The fact that I'm in my pajamas doesn't matter. I'm here. This is all the energy I have for you right now, is to show up. So when you start seeing some of those changes within your environment, you are usually very engaged, but suddenly your academic or emotional, behavioral, or physical status starts to slide a little bit. It's usually something that should indicate to you that, hey, something might be wrong, and I need to, maybe get on with looking at what are some of the things that are wrong. And how do you do that? This is where you engage. And engaging is really troubleshooting challenges. So that you get to a place where you can recognize if you need help or when you need help and who to go to for help. And this will be for yourself or for your peers. And when you're engaging with yourself, this is where you need to do things like taking the time to stop and listen. We all are go, 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 go. Trust me, I know from the moment you wake up to the time you go to bed, it's really difficult sometimes for someone to say to you, find 5 minutes to just sit still, think and feel your body, feel what's happening within yourself. Because for that 5 minutes, you could do something. If I literally said to all of us right now, take a moment, sit down for 5 minutes, many of you may be thinking, this is wasting my time. What the hell? But you need to get into the habit of doing that, whether it's first thing in the morning, middle of the day, end of the day. When you feel this wound up, just take that moment to stop and check in with yourself. Why am I feeling like this? What is it that I'm feeling? Is my heart racing? Am I breathing too hard? Am I stiff? Is my back, neck, shoulders painful? Is it my feet? Am I hungry? What's happening to me right now? And take a moment to take a sense of where your body is. If you're feeling really wound up and really stressed, start thinking about those, what's happening? Why am I stressed? What are all those things that are causing those stress? And then based on all of that, you can start wiggling down to, trying to find solutions to bring down this level of anxiety, stress, overwhelmed, whatever it is you're feeling. So definitely get into the habit of doing check-in exercises, but ultimately be kind to yourself. And I say this to people all the time, and people kind of laugh at me, but we do really need to be kind to ourselves. Oftentimes it's like, oh, you should work harder, or you should have energy for this. You're so stupid. Why can't you do it? You need to be able to say to yourself, you know what? I say this to myself half the time. It's like, I have a kid who I raise, all the time. She's up, she's healthy, she's bathed, she's fed, she's happy. I don't need to clean house every single day. If I can't get to it, it's not a horrible thing, but I will eventually get to it. Rather than to say the least you could do is clean the house and you've got to let yourself go in some of these things. So please be kind to yourself. If you're checking with a friend, if you feel your friend is struggling, what I will say though is, don't start a conversation that you don't have the time to finish. Hey, how are you doing? I'm doing okay. Is fine if you don't have time. If you really say to a person, no, but really, how are you? Be invested in spending the time it may take in case something is wrong. Because if a person sees that you're willing and open to listen to them and you really want to connect and help them, they may tell you something that is beyond 2 or 3 minutes. So don't start a conversation that you're not able to connect with. In that instance, you may just say, you know what, I realize that something might be going on with you, or I've noticed that something might be happening with you. And I really wanted to make time for us to talk. Do you have time and arrange a time for you to meet and listen? Empathy is really, really key. A person may be going through something that you might not understand, or going through something that you might think is very simple, but their experience is different from yours. So definitely be empathetic, but please check in with people. We all need to check in with each other, especially right now. I'm a continuing ed student as well. And one of the things that I've started to do with other people within my group is we just do a random once a week, hey, so-and-so, how are you doing? And we do a chat on WhatsApp to see how everyone is doing, because it's hard. It's really hard sometimes. And once you've done that notice and you've now engaged, you may want to refer people to services. And referring people is really passing the baton to somebody who's able to help. I mentioned in the beginning, this isn't about you taking the load on or you trying to fix something for somebody. It is really about saying, okay, now that we know what's going on, where can I go for assistance? Where can I go to get some help? And allowing yourself or allowing that person to build their toolkit of resilience. So it's about accessing resources or supports, which leads me to my resource, which is student health and wellbeing, but specifically SHARP, which is a resource that is going to be made available to you. SHARP is run out of my department, which is the Health Promotion Programs Department. And it really stands for Student Health Assistance and Resilience Program. The people who are my peer ambassadors are fourth year social work students and post-diploma nursing students who have been, by the time I'm done with them, incredibly trained on helping to support students' health and well-being. So similar to how you have math tutors and English tutors and that kind of stuff, these are really health and well-being life skills type supporters. They will help students with whatever it is that they need when they're on campus. So I put here whether it's connecting on campus or accessing resources or chatting about a game, it doesn't really matter. My team is here to support students for what they need. And how do we do that? We provide one-to-one peer support on health and well-being. And it's usually when we're on site, you can drop in, but right now, because we're not on site, we need you to sign in and make an appointment, and I'll show you how to do that right now. It is a student service run out of my department, so it is a free service. We support students, we don't counsel students, but we do support students and we allow them to talk through a lot of what they need to do. We have had students come to us to talk through things like how to manage their finances better, how to communicate with their partners and their family and colleagues better, how to do assignments better, how to self-advocate with teachers, all the way to the other end. I'm having problems sleeping. What are some strategies I can use to develop for sleep management? What are some strategies I can use for healthy living, so nutrition, physical exercise, and that kind of stuff. So the topic doesn't really matter. We're there to help students with that. What we've also found is students tend to come to us with great big problems, really big problems. I'm overwhelmed with this, or I'm feeling stressed, but they don't really know what the root cause of that stress is. And they just feel like they need to go to a service and they don't know which service to go to. What we do with students is help them go from this big problem that they're having, whittle it down to buckets of manageable things. So I'm stressed and overwhelmed because, I don't know, as an example, I'm having a hard time writing my paper because I've got to go to work to make money, but I also have to take care of my child and I also have to do that other thing. Now that you have the specific things that are causing you your stress and anxiety, you're now able to strategize things that will help you, address them and hopefully reduce some of that stress and anxiety. We have group meetings on common topics that we have as well, where people come together at a specific time to just meet and discuss and connect on these things. So it could be anything from exam stress, connections. With continuing education students, in the past, we've done groups on parenting, we've done groups on looking after being caregivers to people. So we can pretty much do a group on whatever the common topic is. We also support students by referring them who are referred to us. So sometimes staff faculty refer students to us. We help to create connections, like I mentioned, help students navigate services. So students like yourselves who have limited access, you want to make sure that by the time you access the service, you're getting the most out of it and not wasting a consultation or wasting one of those slots on trying to figure out if it's the right thing that you need. So we will help you navigate to get to the right service that you need sooner rather than later. And where we can provide that service for you at no cost, we will continue to do that for you as well. In some instances, people want an actual health plan and other people, they don't. So we can do a health wellness planning for you if you need it, but it's not a must. Basically, we are that friend or confidant for students who need it. Whether or not they have a friend or a confidant, because sometimes you don't want to speak to your friends about some of the issues you may have. So how do you access our services? We are available right now, Tuesdays through Thursdays, starting October 4th through to April 7th. I am going to have staggered hours, so students will be available in the evening as well, or my team will be available to you in the evening as well. You can see us by either sending an email to shop@Ryerson, and then we can set up an appointment for you, or you can book your own appointment by clicking on that link. When you click on that link, it will take you to a calendar like this, and you have time slots that you can just click on to book an appointment. So once you click on that, it will spit back to you the details for how to connect on your appointment. And at that time, just connect. You will get a reminder email just to say, hey, thank you for signing up. We're gonna connect with you at this time. One thing to note is once you sign up, you have initial intake with myself. I connect you with the team, and that team becomes your resource. They don't come back to me to talk to me about your case unless it's warranted. But if it is warranted, they will let you know before they come back to me. You then formulate that relationship with your support team, and they're the ones that look after you for the period of time that you're with us. The other thing that we also do is student wellbeing workshop series, and we run these Tuesdays and Thursdays at midday. I did speak to some of your colleagues and said to them, I'm happy to offer them in the evenings. If it's easier for all of you. Because it's certainly workshops that were helpful to students. These ones that I've listed here were the most popular ones for last year. One was virtual. The first one was virtual learning, how to prepare to be a good virtual learner and maintain well-being while doing that. The second one was COVID. This is for people who have anxieties or who have developed anxieties over the last year, and they're worrying about what that means and how to live with COVID. Well, not live with COVID, live in the age of COVID. Sleepy exams is about how to prepare for exams and how to manage health and well-being during exams. What now? The unexpected grade is what to do when you fail. What are some things you can do for yourself, but also what are some practical things you can do? Self-care resilience is looking after yourself and building resilience. And the last one is well-being and finals, when you're looking at your final paper and what you need to do to maintain well-being. I'll very quickly go through some well-being topics. I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail because I'll be sharing this with you. But ultimately, self-care is that little thing in the middle here. And in order for you to maintain self-care, you've got to pull in components and address and meet components from your physical, mental, and social well-being. You can throw in their spiritual well-being as well, because really, what you want to do is to move a little bit more, focus your mind a little bit more, or quiet your mind a little bit more, get a lot of rest, get off of tech as much as you can, but also make connections with people. When you connect with people and do all of those things, those lead to self-care. Oftentimes when we say to people, what do you do for self-care? They'll come up with activities such as, I don't know, I take a ride and I write in my gratitude journal and I go and I, work out and eat well and that kind of, and those are all really, really, really important as well. But you do need to do, altruistic things, acts of kindness. You need to get off of screens to take time for you. You need to focus on controlling the things that are happening internally for you as well. So I'll leave this with you for you to read when you get the slides, but maintaining good self-care is really, really important so that it keeps your mind settled. As I mentioned, if any of these things are wrong, so if, I'm gonna use my nephew's word, if your mental health is out of whack, or if your physical activity is out of whack, it's going to have an impact on your well-being, and that will have an impact on your ability to do well. As a key example, if you are worried about, I don't know, paying your rent, and your focus is really on, I now need to find money, I need to get another job, I need to do other things, and I need to pay rent, and I need to make sure, you're going to focus on strategizing how to do that. And your mind and your energy is going to be taken away from the focus on writing a paper or focus on studying for a paper and that kind of stuff, so that the thing you ultimately submit at the end will not be as good as it could have been if you hadn't been so focused on finding strategies for paying rent. So yeah, you need to find ways of addressing all of these areas of your life, and it doesn't really take too much. I know when we talk about physical activity, people are like, oh, 30 minutes exercise. It could be 30 minutes exercise, but it doesn't have to be all at once. It could just be taking a walk. It doesn't have to be running and burning every calorie and sweating yourself to death. It's about keeping your body moving and stretched out and moved out kind of thing. I mentioned mindfulness. Mindfulness is really, really important. And when I started talking to students about mindfulness, I used to get this, oh, this is foo-foo stuff, and it's really silly. I don't know why you need me to do this and that kind of stuff. What I will say, though, is mindfulness is really important in that it forces you to be aware of yourself. It forces you to pay attention to yourself and your environment and internally on purpose to stay in the present moment and to be compassionate to yourself. Very difficult for some people because we don't like feeling. It's an uncomfortable thing to take the time to stop and feel what we feel, the feels, as people say. Not everybody likes that. So it could be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, but mindfulness really is an awareness that emerges once you start paying attention on purpose in the present moment with compassion and an open heart. By cultivating mindfulness, you become aware of what's happening to you right now. And you don't worry so much, and you stop worrying about what happened in the past, and you stop worrying about what's going to come in the future because you're focused on what's happening to you in this moment. When you do that, when you practice mindfulness, and this is based on science, what that does is it strengthens your concentration, and it will lead you to palpable and lasting stress reduction stuff, and improves decision-making, reduces rumination. So as an example, if you take a moment and you stop right now and you're like, okay, I am feeling overwhelmed. I am feeling at the end of my rope. I'm incredibly tired. I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to find a way of focusing. It allows you in the moment to say, okay, so why is it I can't focus right now? What is the thing that's taking me away from my focus? It also allows you to say, okay, I'm tired because I'm not sleeping. Well, why am I not sleeping? I should make a plan to sleep. All the stuff that is happening, you're now focusing on what's happening to you right now, and you're finding solutions right now. When you do that and you address that, it takes your mind away from all of these different things and allows you to then concentrate on stuff. It allows for you then to say, okay, I can't continue doing like this because it doesn't work, which will help to reduce your stress. It also will help with your decision making because you're able to say, these are the things that are happening. These are the things I need to address right now. So let me decide what to do. And if you can decide in that moment, you're making decisions, your decision making is happening right then. And then it will take away those ruminations about what's coming in the future. Because if you address things now, you may know what the results is going to be in the future. I need to study for an exam. I really need to pass that exam. Thinking I need to pass an exam doesn't help you if you don't put in place strategies for studying and getting the content you need in order to pass that exam. So mindfulness is really key. Mindfulness too is very helpful in promoting things like calmness and returning to calmness when things are going outside. Mindfulness is founded in things like breathing and focusing on your breath and in and out in your breath. And when you do that, it will calm your mind and it will bring you back into the present. It also helps when you practice mindfulness and do things right away. It helps with things like sleep. It helps with connecting with others because you're less riled up, you're less irritable, and you do intend to connect with the people around you a little bit easier. And it also enhances positive feelings of well-being, a sense of control for yourself, of your emotions, of your environment, of things that are happening to you. So lots of really useful things connected to mindfulness. The last thing that I will do, I'm not going to do this with you now because I usually would do it with my students, but I do want to say mindfulness does not have to be 30 minutes. It doesn't need to be an hour of, like sitting in Zen that many people may have. It could just be 5 minutes. So I put this 5-minute mindfulness clip here. Lots of them are on YouTube. You can certainly look them up there and find one that makes better sense to you. But I'd highly recommend you try get into a rhythm of mindfulness. Oh, sorry, it's gonna play. Let me just give it. The last thing that I'll do, and again, as a person who's a continuing ed student who is working at the same time as raising a child and everything, I think for many of you, you're gonna laugh when you hear me say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Sleep. If you can get at least 7 hours of sleep, things will be so much better. Because when you sleep, it rests your mind, it cements any learning that you may have to do, but it helps with those kinds of problem solving things and focusing and having energy to manage and deal with everything coming at you. But if you can get a good night's sleep regularly, at least 7 hours, you're going to be on track to doing things a little bit differently and feeling at least better able to cope and manage things around you. Beyond my department, which is the health promotion department, we also have the student well-being areas that are available to you. And if you click on that link, it'll take you to this page. Those well-being areas include accommodation, services, counseling, health promotion, medical center, test center, and Thrive RU. If you have a learning disability and you need accommodations for your learning, whether it's extended time for exams or like visual aids or auditory aids, whatever it is, if you have any accommodations that you may need for your academics, the academic accommodations people will help you out with that. They do have things like deadlines. So if you go to their website, they have information on what deadlines they have for submitting applications and stuff like that. Very good video in there that they'll provide for you. So highly recommend that you go to their page if you have a learning a learning accommodation that you need to get. Counseling, I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's different levels of counseling that you're going to need. What I can suggest to you is you reach out to counseling specifically if you do need anything, but counseling services are available to students as well. I'm not sure how much coverage you'll get for them, but certainly reach out to them, you have a conversation with them and they can tell you what they're able to do to support, how they're able to support you and for how long. Also have a video down here for you. Where you're not able to get counseling services with them, I do strongly encourage you to please come to shop. We may be able to assist you with whatever it is you're needing help with. The other resource that you could also access that will be helpful to you right on the front page here is the Keep Me Safe app. It is an app for RISE students to call into to get online support from counselors. We have counselors in 60 languages across the world who can help out. So you need to just download the app and it allows you to call in and or tap in and text in and they'll be able to connect you. They are working with us. So this Keep Me Safe will refer you to resources back on campus if that's what's required. Medical center is like the doctor's office. And so you're able to register with them and see the doctors there as long as you are a student at RISE and with the RISE and ID. And you just book an appointment to see a doctor like you would any other doctor. The test center is attached and connected to accommodation, academic accommodation support. This is where they would arrange things like makeup tests or private space for tests for people who need to take tests on their own and stuff like that. So I would connect with them. The other one service that falls under us as well is Thrive. Thrive has these workbooks that they put out that line up with the individual week of the semester that you're in. Really good resources. You may find them helpful. I would say just go on there. You can certainly download them and take a look and work through them if you need to, or just access the resources that they have in there if that's what you need. I'm going to come back to us. And those are all those resources. So I'm also going to share with you here my contact information. This is my name, my information, my email. If you have any questions at all about health and well-being support and you can't find it, or just general questions that you may want to ask, send them my way and I'll help you as best I can. We also have a general health promotion email and a shop email, the one I mentioned for the shop program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at RISE and Health. The other stuff that I've put in here are just resources that are useful to students. RU4U is a website that has all of the student services and that are available on there. You can always go to each of them and have them tell you to what extent you're supported, because I expect some of them will have some supports and some might not, but I would say go there and ask them and get a no rather than assume it's a no. Keep Me Safe is the one I was just talking to you about, the mental health resource that you can call into. Student Wellbeing is a website I just told you about. The last one I will mention is the Computing and Communication Services, which is CCSC. And I'm really sorry, I think I'm a little bit over time. CCSC is the computer tech people on campus. most of our students sometimes struggle needing software for programs. So your computer might not have PowerPoint, or it doesn't have SPSS if you're doing a research class, or in vivo if you need to do that kind of research as well. You can get some of that software at CCSC. So if you get to go to software, there's all of this software that's available to you. And if you just click on it, it'll allow for you to download it as a student. It is attached to your Ryerson, My Ryerson account. So click on there, and if you type in My Ryerson, it'll allow you to download whatever the software you require for the work that you need to do. That is all the information I'm going to share with you right now, and I will probably hold off until the end to answer any questions. Unless, Lyndall, you wanted them to ask questions now and wait for you, but I think it's probably best to do it at the very end.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just note that there is like one question that was raised in the Q&A, and maybe now, like, since we're going to shift over to my small portion of the presentation, maybe you can just see that Q&A question and get back to Sam. But in the meantime, I will share my screen and we'll get going. Okay, so my name is Lyndall Musselman. I'm the Student Rights Coordinator for CESAX, the Continuing Education Student Association at Ryerson. So just moving on, we're going to talk about how knowing your student rights at the university is beneficial to your mental health and your well-being, in a sense, and can help you manage your time and just make a plan for the upcoming semester. So first off, it's good to understand that there is this term at the university that is academic consideration. So that is basically the fancy word phrase for asking for a deferral of a test or an exam, or asking for an extension on an assignment or a big essay or whatever the work in question is. And it's when you have extenuating circumstances. So another fancy term. So that means when there's like a barrier to your academic success. And that's meant to be inclusive. And we'll go over the definition of extenuating circumstances in a second. So just know that it's Senate Policy 167 that is the academic consideration policy. It will help you. It's meant to help you, though many students, unfortunately, might not be super aware of this policy and the processes that it outlines. Sometimes until it's a bit too late, but it's good where possible to know in advance, right? So extenuating circumstances, that is when, and the university defines it this way, that there are occurrences or events that are outside of a student's immediate control, could not have been reasonably foreseen or avoided, and significantly is impacting your ability to fulfill your academic requirements. So key things, let's just ponder on this. Oh yeah, here's this video. We'll watch it shortly, but just think about how your health and your specifically your mental health sometimes can be something beyond your control. And it's so challenging, as Juannitah was talking about, just to assess yourself or reflect, do that sort of noticing. That's so important, right? When you are feeling overwhelmed. And sometimes it's just in hindsight that you can catch some of these things. We're going to look at this video. It's really short. It is a lot of information, but it's really, really important and good to know. And I'll help summarize some of the things afterwards, because you may have some questions as we watch it, because it is a kind of a lot of info. And there's one special thing. You get one opportunity per semester without having to provide documentation or a doctor's note, that can cost money, by the way, to ask for academic consideration, to basically get a kind of free pass, in a sense, to defer a test or exam. So we'll just watch this video. So Yeah, like in summary, you really want to do that sort of checking in. Like you have, for example, a deadline for an assignment that's coming up. It's good to foresee it as much as possible. Like if it's next week and you're like, oh dear, I don't even have a draft yet. Oh dear, I'm worried about this. That's a signal that you're maybe needing more time, and it doesn't hurt to ask. I know that sometimes students are shy and private about things, but it doesn't hurt to just make the request. And you have that one time without documentation opportunity to just take the deferral, like just ask for the deferral. Most professors should be open and recognize that this is a very stressful time for everyone, including students. I would say especially students right now when you're juggling so many obligations and things like that. So I just want you to be encouraged to like use that online system, use this process, and be reassured that it is confidential. It's treated with respecting, privacy of a student. Only those that, in a sense, need to know are informed about the documentation. They're kept by actually program administrators, program coordinators. And yeah, you can make one request and it can be sort of applied across the time frame in question. So it could relate to multiple courses that you're taking that semester. And it's a kind of automated system that is meant to make things easier for you. And also the administrators who used to take in specific like pieces of documentation, and now things are more streamlined and private. So also, this was touched on in the video, the university has a health certificate. It's basically a simplistic form that helps the health professional just provide the required information that the university is really looking for. So here is what it looks like. The first part is to be completed by you, the student. Part A there, it's very straightforward. And then part B is where your health professional, so it does not have to be a doctor necessarily, though in many cases that might be the most appropriate person to have complete this form. It just has to be a regulated health professional. So they should indicate the degree of your incapacitation at the time in question, and it's most successful when it is like serious, when there's kind of more serious levels of incapacitation. That's where you have a more kind of surefire way to be granted the academic consideration. But of course, that's up to your health professional to complete. So that's up to their discretion, and they just need to sign. And it's always good to sort of review and make sure that your health professional has completed the document properly. Yeah, so you don't have to go get it submitted again, go get it completed again by the person. Yeah, and then the online portal. So this is accessible actually through D2L. I forget the label. It's something like student supports or something like that. But it's also very accessible through the Senate website, which I will show you here. Basically, I will put the link in the chat in a moment too. But it is under their resources page. So you can even just Google Ryerson Senate resources. And then just as it shows here on this slide, just look on the left-hand side and there's a link to online academic consideration requests. ACR is the acronym that they use all the time. And there's also a link to the health certificate there if you're looking for it. But yeah, that will take you to the login. You'll have to use your university's like Ryerson ID and do your usual login, and you'll be connected there. And yeah, I really just want to encourage you all to use the academic consideration ACR process. So it does involve some planning ahead, but it can be used when you've maybe missed deadlines. You can retroactively request academic consideration too. That's really important to know. And of course, if you do have academic accommodations through AAS, get those in place as soon as possible and use your accommodations. It's really good to not just wait until you're maybe struggling to complete certain assignments, or if you're falling behind. Try to just be prepared. There's no harm. It is fair and good to use your accommodations, right? That's what they're there for. And it's a part of the human rights code that you should be accommodated. So just overall, some support for that. So yeah, often I encounter students that are really confused, overwhelmed, kind of reluctant to consult or approach either their home program support people or folks at the university or their professors. But just know that taking some actions to try to informally resolve any issue you're encountering, like with your academic studies, is really key, is super, super helpful, just in case you end up needing to file a grade appeal or take more formal sort of action around things. And I want to say that if you're feeling stressed out about any situation like that, you can get help asking for help. I can help you. So you're welcome to be in touch with me. The Ryerson Students Union, RSU, also has an advocate for students that does the same thing as I do. So there's two of us. And yeah, there's also a whole lot of resources, as already was shared, that hopefully can offer you some help with getting help, right? As was already touched on. So just a couple other policies that are really good for students to be aware of. So as we were alluding to, policy 159, which is the academic accommodation of students with disabilities. Really, really important. That policy outlines how you should be set up with your accommodations and be registered through academic accommodation support. And then also, Ryerson has an accommodation of student religious and spiritual observance policy. So that's where, like, I think there was a holiday just yesterday, the day before, and it can happen, like Ramadan happens often during the academic year, and it's not necessarily like a holiday, right, in our calendar where you have the day off. So you should try to plan ahead and use this policy. You can request an extension or defer of a midterm or whatever the thing is until another time where you can complete the work. And then there's some other policies. So there's an examination policy that says that students should be able to write exams free of distractions and have a more secure examination space, which is interesting in this time of so many online tests and exams. So you could use some of these policies to your advantage if you need to. So I encourage you to just be aware of them. And then the course management policy, if you feel like a professor is not sticking to the course outline that they had provided to you, or if things are just not being kind of managed with the course properly, I encourage you to review that policy. And then finally, just know that as a last resort, there is the appeal process that exists, and I can help you with if necessary, right? So that's a grade and standing appeal policy. So there's recourse, there's options to just saying all this to help you feel reassured that there are some avenues to take to try to troubleshoot and work to resolve any issues you might encounter. So I think this is basically the end of my little piece that I wanted to share with you. Here's my contact information. I can put my email in the chat in a moment here. Email is really the best way to get in touch, to set up an appointment, or just ask questions, get things resolved. And yeah, phone, I can call you. I'm just, not super readily available at the office, as most of us are still working remotely these days. But yeah, I think that is it. So we'll go into question mode. I think I'll stop sharing my screen. I see that there's some Q&A action and chat stuff happening. So maybe Juannitah, we'll just check in if there's anything in terms of the recording, any wrap up little statements we want to make, and then we'll stop recording, and then we can allow folks to talk even. Does that sound okay?
That does sound okay. I think that the last thing, or the only thing I would add, is to just encourage people to reach out if you need it. There is no shame in saying I need help. And, like Lyndall said, you want to do it before it gets too bad. It's incredibly surprising how fast 13 weeks goes or 12 weeks goes. So as soon as things start to, definitely get a hold of us. The other thing I will also say is, if you have expectations, or sometimes you can see that something is coming, talk to your professors before anything goes wrong. Your professor is your best friend when it comes to your learning. And I know for some people it's a little bit unnerving and it's scary and blah, blah, blah. But your professor is the one person who can help you if you let them help you. But they can't do anything if you tell them after the fact. So if you know you're starting to struggle, tell them ahead of time. Say I'm struggling, it's week 2, I'm struggling, and I have a paper due in week 5, and I know I may not get to it. Tell your professor right now, you know what, this is what I'm going through. I'm really going to try and work on it. And this is what I'm going to do to try and make sure it gets done. But I may ask for extension, or I may need an extension. Give them that heads up ahead of time. And they will be able to work around it with you. I mean, you can't be like, okay, I have 5 jobs that I need to work, and so I need to, they may not be as forgiving for something like that, because when you sign up for school, there has to be an element of commitment from your end as well. But I would say, if you do nothing else, start talking to your professor early if things are going to go wrong, because they're the ones that can help you with extensions. And one of the questions in the chat, they may be, bare minimum when it comes to policies and stuff like that. There's stuff that is outlined in policies that they have to absolutely do. So the first question is a policy, a bare minimum right that students have, or that professors are supposed to follow. So policies can be guides, and there are some things that, yes, they have to follow. But sometimes it's left to how that person interprets it. So I would definitely say your professor is a person who can guide you when things on, so for example, if you go to a professor and they're not able to do something for you, or they say they can't do something for you, and it's outlined in the policy that they should be able to and that they can, that's where the policy will be brought up, kind of thing. But most professors, I think, are accommodating. It could just be my experience with them, but they can only be accommodating if you come to them early enough. So as soon as you can, or as soon as something's being, what's with my hair? Just let them know, and they'll be able to help you out. Lyndall, I think you may be able to speak to that a little bit better than I did.
Sure, but yeah, you touched on it. So basically around that Q&A question that I clicked on, I would answer live. So around the bare minimum. So I would say the bare minimum is that students can request, and it is bound up as a right and responsibility, because you have to communicate that. You have to request it. You have to make that request, ideally as they ask you through the portal, through that online system that exists now, or at a minimum indicate somehow, as Juannitah is saying, via email or and email's the best because then you have a paper trail, right? Yeah, so like the thing is though, the decision makers are various people and they have different like spectrums of consideration and they're different perspectives, right? So yes, some are lenient, some are more understanding, and then some are more strict. But the strict ones should know that the policy does say that there can be flexibility, that there should be some consideration when students have valid extenuating circumstances. So that's why students can appeal if they, have done what they're supposed to, communicated with their profs, submitted a request, provided some documentation if it was requested. And this is where the strict ones will request it and know that they can request it. Others can be more lenient. That is the spectrum, right? That's what people are like. And so, yeah, like it's good just to know what's expected of you as a student in a sense. And the real key is communication. Yeah, absolutely. And then the other one, I said I would elaborate on a bit, the difference between a health certificate or academic consideration and registering with academic accommodation support. So they're very different. They're actually two separate policies. So where you would want to use a health certificate or request academic consideration, that is related to policy 167, the academic consideration policy, and also the appeals policy, right? So it's around when something extra happens, something extra concerning and extraordinary has happened in a sense, like there's a barrier for you. So it could be you've been evicted all of a sudden, there's death in the family, or your health, right? Like, or you're just feeling super overwhelmed, right? That's valid, right? And so that's when you can use the request for academic consideration, okay? And then going over to the other policy, policy 159, which is all about being a student with disability and your accommodations. And that's where you should be, as soon as possible, registered with academic accommodation support to get your, kind of legally sanctioned in a way, accommodations set up. So when the university uses the word accommodation, it's usually about accommodating disabilities around these type of things. That's just the phrasing that they're using. And then to distinguish that, they talk about consideration, academic consideration, when it's more about like being unwell on top of, for example, maybe having already your accommodations in place, you can still get sick, right? So you might need to use both of those policies in a sense.
Yeah. I think another way to actually look at it as well is I think they said health certificate or medical certificate kind of thing. Those are the exception to the rules. In normal circumstances, you don't need it, but something's happened, so you need it. Whereas an accommodation is something you need from the get-go and is something you'll need ongoing. But yeah, the considerations really come up when those extenuating, unexpected circumstances and things happen that you need to get some consideration for. So as Lyndall was saying, a death in the family or unexpected changes within your life. So you've been evicted or I don't know. I know one of my students once upon a time was pregnant and she had a premature child and that wasn't expected. So we needed to make accommodations for that. You get into an accident and you have, so those are the kinds of things, what the consideration might be is different from what an accommodation would be. So if you have an accommodation, the accommodation comes and says, this person has this diagnosis or this disability, and this is the thing that they need in order for them to do well. So as an example, a person who is hearing impaired would need these specific things, and the school is, the university has to provide those specific things in order for them to do well. With a consideration, it could be like what happened to me. I had an accident, I broke my arm. My consideration was extra time to do my assignments because I couldn't get things around. My consideration was having them get me a note taker because I couldn't do notes. It was a location for me to do certain of the assessment things because I couldn't do those. And it was just because I was injured. Once my injury was over, those went. It didn't continue on with me. So yeah, maybe that's the way to maybe also continue to think about it. Any unexpected, and I would say, if it's impactful to you, bring it forward, because sometimes you may think, oh, well, this seems silly, but if it has an impact to you, bring it forward. Like I mentioned in my thing, one little part of your life goes wrong, your learning is going to go wrong. You break a pinky, you may be like, oh, well, you know, it's a pinky, or a little toe. Somebody broke a little toe and they're like, oh, whatever, it's a little toe. Your body balances on the little toe. So it has an impact. So whatever it is, I would say if it has an impact on you and is having an impact, that a big enough impact, consider maybe bringing it forward to considerations, but it has to be a big impact. It can't just be something really small. And have them say, again, I'll say it again, have them say no, rather than just assume they're going to say no. Let them actually say no to you.
That's a great point. Great point. And so we did get another sort of follow-up around that. I would say, because it is like, it can be such an ambiguous thing, the difference between accommodations and the academic consideration, because, you know, like if someone's accommodations are have extra time, have extensions sort of as a default for their accommodation letter, then that would be like, as you were saying, Juannitah, sort of the norm of like what would be set up on like all the time for you in a semester, right? But then if there was something new, or like if you were just having a panic attack or a flare up maybe of a health condition, for example, that's where you would request academic consideration. Like you would go through that process to even get additional time, like have an extension to your extension. Do you see what I mean? I hope that helps clarify. Yeah, this is complicated stuff, and there is like nuance about some of these differences. And I help students all the time that fall into confusion between these types of things. And even professors can be confused about these things too. Yeah, so just noticing the time, it is after 6 when we were supposed to wrap up, but thank you everyone. In case there's any more questions, let's see, I think that we've covered all the Q&A questions now. And oh yeah, someone did put in the chat that yesterday was, what was it? The Jewish New Year was yesterday. So yeah, there are many holidays that people recognize that aren't necessarily like the more Western holidays that are sort of considered as days off. So yes, just it means planning ahead though, in order to utilize like those type of accommodations through these policies. Like you can unfortunately request things retroactively around the religious observance one, unfortunately, though you could try to explain that if you're brand new, and like it was just yesterday, it is so new in the academic year that it might be reasonable to say that you unfortunately were unaware, but hopefully you didn't miss anything, because usually in the first week of classes it's usually just intro stuff. So, but anyway, really the big takeaway is just trying to look ahead and plan ahead. Look at your calendar. Think about when those holidays fall and things like that, or the religious occasions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, again, even if your holiday is not a Western holiday, bring it up. It is your holiday. It is your observance. And what they may... you may need to prove it. It's a shame that you may need to prove it, but you may need to prove it. And I mean, there's ways of saying, you know, in our culture, we have this, and you can Google it for them if that's what they need to do. But yeah, again, don't discount your own religious practices because they're not conventional as a Western definition of conventional would be, right?
Absolutely.